Let's start with a basic fact. Good weed control is possible in organics, I promise. Have you ever heard that story about weed Armageddons on organic farms? Most likely. And can a weed apocalypse happen? Absolutely. If a conventional farmer just quit spraying and did nothing else to combat a weed flush, what do you think would happen? What would that look like? A weedy mess, right? There are, unfortunately, examples of farms that are what we'd say organic by neglect, meaning that conventional tools have just been abandoned without any shift in practices and mindset necessary for success. And then there are the organic farmers who have put in the hours to develop those skills that result in fields that are cleaner than their conventional neighbors. Actually, a Minnesota farmer, Jerry Matzner, has a great story about that. Jerry?
If you were to drive by in late summer, most people would not be able to pick our farm out from the neighbors. In fact, we've had some of our fields have looked better than our neighbors. I can even tell you one story, a neighbor that's not a big fan of ours, which I don't know if they have a reason to be, but I know they're just probably not a big fan of organics. At a Labor Day gathering, was complaining about the organic guys down the road and how weedy the field is. And one of the son-in-laws that's there, married into the family, he kind of likes us, and we've done some stuff with him. And he says, "What field are you talking about?" And he says, "Oh, that one right across from the driveway." And he said, "Yeah, that's not their field. That's actually a conventional field that has a lot of resistant weeds in it. Theirs is the one next to it, which had just gotten walked and was spotless clean." So they kind of had to eat their words a little bit, but we can have very clean fields, and it comes back to the tools and the process and the plan, and just knowing it. It's not an overwhelming task. It just takes some patience and some diligence.
See? I told ya. Good, clean fields are possible in organics, but we need a solid strategy and a decent toolkit. Clean fields should be the rule, not the exception. But what do we mean by a clean field on an organic farm? It might be a little different than what we mean by a clean field under conventional management. A clean field in organics is a field where weeds don't have an economic impact. This will almost never mean weed elimination, which would look good and maybe feel good, but require a lot more effort than it's really worth. This will take some getting used to. We get that. There's a lot wrapped up in having those perfectly clean fields. We're shooting for clean in organics, but not perfectly clean. Organic farmers don't have that easy button of herbicides, making the job of controlling weeds a little harder and less, well, weedless. But ultimately, it is more satisfying. Before getting into the specific practices themselves, let's spend some time covering organic weed control strategy. We'll break it down into these three categories: small hammers, an ounce of prevention, and process over products. 1. Those little hammers. Synthetic pesticides are, for the most part, extremely effective tools. If we think of an herbicide as a sledgehammer that's going to kill every weed there is, driving every nail home no matter how hard it lands, we can think of organic weed control strategies as a collection of many tiny little hammers that together can nearly equal the heft of that sledge. So what are all of these tiny little hammers? Some are obvious, things like careful cultivation, mowing field edges, and planting clean seed. Others might be less clearly tied to weed control, but are no less important. Things like good seedbed preparation, a strategic crop rotation, adjusting seeding rates, clean equipment, and delayed planting. All these strategies, when used together, create an agro-ecosystem that will resist weed infestation and grow a good, profitable crop. 2. An ounce of prevention. Well, you've heard the saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, attributed to our man Ben Franklin.
Cheers.
This couldn't be more true of organic weed control, considering that there really aren't any cures for weeds in organic. So that really just leaves the prevention. Planting cover crops that suppress weeds before they can establish. Cultivating weeds before they have a chance to grow. Clipping mature weeds before they have a chance to go to seed. All examples of nipping it in the bud is really the best option. In the end, now is just always better than later. And that might mean you miss that fishing trip to hop on the tractor before that rain comes. That's the ounce of prevention keeping you from just a world of hurt. 3. Process over products. No label rates here. Organic herbicide does exist, but it's just too expensive and not effective enough to make sense for field crops. Organic management, whether it's weed control or nutrient planting, depends on intertwined processes that work within an agro-ecosystem, not products that seek to control and confine that system. One quick rules and regs call out here. Weed control is written right into the regulations in the section 205, 206, one of my favorite sections. The language calls out good preventative cultural practices like crop rotation, nutrient management, and biological controls. It also covers control options like cultivation, flame weeding, mulching, mowing, and a lot more. Once again, good organic farming practices are built right into the regulations. All right, now let's get some rubber on the road and talk about strategy. We've broken this into these pretty simple directives. 1, keep weeds from emerging. 2, kill the weeds that do emerge. And 3, control the weed seed bank. We'll be taking a deep dive into each throughout this module. We know that these aren't mind-blowing ideas, but effective weed control isn't rocket science either. And within each of these 3 very general strategies are evidence-based practices that together create a solid weed control program. Clean fields are possible, and we're going to show you how. See you in the next lesson.